So, 10 years of FNAF, huh? How the fuck did we get here? With more than 10 games under its belt, this franchise really grew to have a special place in the hearts of many, including me. These games are all great and fantastic, none of them did anything wrong, and they're all perfect. Fuck. So, it seems that the community mostly agrees that, from the classics at least, there is one game that is objectively the worst. And that game is FNAF 2. Really? I mean, say what you will about the gameplay being repetitive, the RNG, whatever, but bad? Nah. This is not a bad game. In fact, I think FNAF 2 is something a lot of games aren't. FNAF 2 is a perfect sequel. Whoa! There ain't no such thing as a perfect game. What the fuck are you talking about? Let me cook, okay? Let me cook, alright? Well, let me correct you out of the gate and say that a perfect sequel is not a perfect game. See, a sequel is what you call a continuation of a recorded work, be it a book, a movie, or a game. Usually these are made because the first one was successful, aka it made a lot of money. Now, perfect sequels are when these following works manage to continue it in a way that is satisfying and earned. Examples of these are everywhere, but some of the more famous ones that I could list are Portal 2, Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill 2, and Arkham City. They're all considered perfect sequels for they manage to fulfill the certain requirements that elevate them to that status. The requirements may vary, but the main are as follows. Continuing the story, expanding the universe, introducing new mechanics or expanding on them, or a mix of both, and, of course, leaving an undeniable impact on the franchise. And, FNAF.
That computer call. Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth.
Let's begin with the gameplay, shall we? FNAF 2 comes with the returning idea of camera monitoring and killer animatronic avoiding, but this time there's a twist. The one thing that kept you safe in the previous game? Yeah, it's gone. But then how am I supposed to protect myself, you may ask? Well, now that we don't have doors and to keep us safe is just to put on the mask, then what's the incentive for the cameras? If you kind of keep the music box full, you die. Great. But that still doesn't resolve the mask spam. A third and final new mechanic had to be introduced. Foxy and a flashlight. Is it perfect? Nah, not really. Far from it, actually. That's all great and all, but what else is new? Well, unlike the first one, this game's way of bringing horror is overloading the player. In FNAF 1, the player had to monitor the enemies as best they could with the tools given to them. When they couldn't find someone or the cameras failed, that's where you get scared. The horror comes from that. Here, the sheer amount of chaos and unreliable forms of protection creates the horror. Although there is one more thing that I'd like to mention before going to the next topic, which is the sound design of FNAF 2. Here, it isn't as prominent as FNAF 1. Since the focus was changed to chaos, the sirens that you all know and love were put there to enhance that. Everything is intense the moment the animatronics start getting close to you. But when they aren't, however, you can still hear some FNAF 1-ish ambiance. Huh. Just brings a whole new perspective to this game. Most of the time you're just watching the puppet camera and rarely going on others, but if you actually stop and take a look, it's actually pretty cool. Too bad the gameplay just forces that out of the story. Story? Wait, what? It's undeniable that the hidden lore of FNAF 1 was one of the most important aspects that made it the success that it is today. But if you really look into it, there really isn't much going on there. But FNAF 2, it's front and center. you've paid attention to the previous game, you know that the phone guy talks about a certain event that you might be familiar with.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the bite of 87.
In a pretty genius move, in my opinion, the sequel actually takes place before the events of the first. By doing this, it allows the story to become less of an addition to enhance the horror and more of a main focus. We are seeing Freddy's at its prime, or at least the beginning of the fall. The events mentioned in the Easter eggs before are a lot more recent, and I haven't even gone into the best part yet. Let me ask you this. What really began the story of FNAF? I mean, FNAF 1 kickstarted it all, obviously, but when did it really begin? That's right, FNAF 2. When talking about continuing the story, FNAF 2 introduces another iconic feature that every FNAF game had in going forward in some form: the Atari minigames. Talk about a more FNAF way of telling a story, am I right? Actually, the Easter eggs just get elevated in general. Here, secrets in the audio, secrets in the images, secret characters. Bruh, you just can't compete. While FNAF 1 just mentions the murders, FNAF 2 show them. In fact, him, the man behind the slaughter himself, the main antagonist of the whole franchise, had his first ever appearance here. And it wasn't the first. It was the sequel. All of it to say that the amount of expansion and impact FNAF 2 brought to the world of FNAF cannot go unnoticed. I could keep going, but by now I'm pretty sure you get the idea. FNAF 2 is not a bad game or a bad addition to the franchise. It's actually one of the most important entries in it. And I hope I made you remember that.